After being knocked down from 11-9, the Big West first responded by doubling down in Riverside with Cal Baptist, then pivoting to the Beehive State for the first time in 20 years with Utah Valley, and then pivoting back to Northern California with Sacramento State to replenish the loss of UC Davis, giving the Big West 12 members. Now, men's basketball budgets, the only publicly available database for non-FBS schools would be the Department of Education's EADA database. And Sacramento State's men's basketball budget is smack dab in the middle of the Big West. When it comes to historical performance in men's basketball, Sacramento State's 5-year KenPom is 313th, which would be at the bottom of the Big West. And their 10-year KenPom is 303rd, which would be second from the bottom in the Big West. So in order for the Big West to add Sacramento State, they have to have a degree of confidence that Sacramento State is taking actions to improve their men's basketball program. And Sacramento State is doing just that. They have a new basketball arena on the way, the Well, which will open this fall at 3,200 capacity. And this theoretically should make a difference because previously Sacramento State had been playing in one of the worst gyms in Division I, the Hornets Nest, with 1,012 capacity built in 1955. And Sacramento State is also demonstrating commitment to men's basketball by hiring Mike Bibby, and then also Dr. O'Neill as their new general manager. We all remember that star-studded 7-game 0-2 Western Conference final. Shaq, Kobe, Bibby, Weber, Tim Donaghy. So despite Sacramento State's ranking in 5-year KenPom and 10-year KenPom, the Big West has reason to believe they're bringing aboard a new version of Sacramento State basketball. Looking at institutional profiles, the Big West is known for having large enrollment schools. Over half of the conference is above 30,000 enrollment. 10 schools are above 22,000 enrollment, and all 12 are above 10,000 enrollment. Sacramento State at 31,000 enrollment will give the Big West its 7th school above 30,000 enrollment. One reason Sacramento State would be attractive to the Big West is student recruitment. I attempted to look at every Big West school to find a county breakdown of where their students came from, and the only school I was able to find it for was UC Santa Barbara. And Sacramento County consistently provides 3%, or over 100 freshmen yearly, of UC Santa Barbara's in-state students. Over the long term, Sacramento County has been UC Santa Barbara's 8th most important county for student recruitment over the past decade. In reverse, the Big West is a very critical footprint for student recruitment for Sacramento State. SoCal is one of the highest producers of college-going students in the country, and Sacramento State would like to dig in that well a little deeper. Moving from student recruitment to men's basketball recruitment, in 2021-2022, which is the last year the database had information for, California produced the most Division I players in the country and over 8% of D1 players. Now, if you take those 386 California players that year, 120 of them were from north of Fresno, California, which would rank 15th nationally if north of Fresno was its own state, and higher than every non-SoCal state west of Texas. California's highest cities for men's basketball players that year, number 1 was LA, number 2 San Diego, and then number 3 Oakland, number 4 Sacramento were in a virtual tie, only a difference of 1. So those Big West programs are going to see NorCal as important to continue to keep a foothold in after losing UC Davis. And in reverse, Sacramento State hopes that playing so many games in SoCal will help their men's basketball recruiting. And then the same principle would apply to all other sports beyond men's basketball. If we look at the Wall Street Journal's database for alumni distribution, we'll start first with Sacramento State. Over 4% of their alumni are in the LA metro area, and nearly 2% of their alumni are in the San Diego metro area. The idea would be that playing more games in SoCal would enable Sacramento State to reconnect and re-engage with more of their alumni. And if we quickly look at the other Big West schools, nearly 5% of Cal Poly alumni head to Sacramento MSA, over 4% of Cal State Northridge alumni, over 2.5% of UC Santa Barbara alumni, over 1.5% of Cal State Fullerton alumni, 1.5% of Cal State Bakersfield alumni, nearly 1.5% of UC Riverside alumni, nearly 1.5% of UC San Diego alumni, over 1% of UC Irvine alumni, and over 1% of Long Beach State alumni all head to the Sacramento MSA. Putting all of that together, keep in mind CBU was not in the Wall Street Journal database. In Utah Valley, they did not crack the 1% threshold. That leaves 9, and perhaps 10 if it's also true for CBU. Big West schools where one of their primary or secondary metro areas for alumni distribution is Sacramento. And by replacing UC Davis with Sacramento State, those schools can continue to maintain a presence in the Sacramento area and re-engage and reconnect with their alumni. The history of Sacramento State athletics started in the very late 1940s, and by 1953 they would join the Far Western Conference. In 61-62, Sacramento State would be the national runner-up in the 1962 College Division NCAA tournament. Here's the bracket for that 62 College Division tournament. The final 8 of Northeastern, Southern Illinois, Mount St. Mary's, Wittenberg, Sacramento State, Valparaiso, SEMO, and Nebraska Wesleyan would all play at Old Robert Stadium in the Ohio River city of Evansville, Indiana, where Sacramento State would miss out on a national championship by a hair, by a single point in overtime, to Mount St. Mary's, who was in the beginning of the 50-year reign of their legendary head coach. In 85-86, Sacramento State would leave the Northern California Athletic Conference, NCAC, which was formerly the Far Western Conference. And in 88-89, they would join the Great Northwest Conference and then leave the Great Northwest Conference by 90-91. In 91-92, the Hornets would become a Division I independent. In 94-95, Sacramento State would join the American West Conference. Shortly after, in 96-97, Sacramento State would join the Big Sky, and 30 years later, in 2026, at long last, Sacramento State will join the Big West. Here's a graphic showing all of Sacramento State's conference mates throughout the years. In the Far Western Conference, they were conference mates with UC Davis, and also with Nevada for a bit of time. For a couple years, Sacramento State was in the Great Northwest Conference with the pair of Alaska schools. They also spent 1 year with Puget Sound. Of course, Puget Sound nearly ended up in the WCC way back when, if you remember one of the videos here a while back. Once Sacramento State got to the American West, they were conference mates with Cal State Northridge and Cal Poly, who they will be conference mates with once again in the Big West. They were conference mates for a bit of time with Cal State Northridge in the Big Sky as well. Sacramento State would join the Far Western Conference in 1953, where they would be conference mates with schools like UC Davis and Nevada. The Hornets would remain in the Far Western Conference for 32 years, and in the final 3 years, the Far Western Conference would be renamed the NCAC, Northern California Athletic Conference. Sacramento State would leave as the NCAC was still hanging on to non-scholarship athletics, and they would join the Great Northwest Conference in '88 with schools like the Puget Sound Loggers, Alaska Fairbanks, and Alaska Anchorage. Sacramento State would leave the Great Northwest Conference in 1990 and had a lot of beef with the officiating, in particular the free throw discrepancy. Sacramento State would become a Division I independent in '91 and remained there for 3 years before receiving an invite to a D1 conference in the American West, and they would remain in the American West for a couple years until finally getting into the Big Sky in 1996. In all, Sacramento State will end up spending 3 decades, a total of 30 years in the Big Sky until 2026, when they will join the Big West Conference. And with that, we have accomplished completing a Sacramento State Conference realignment video without one time mentioning the word football.